Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We're still doing our pandemic projects. We're almost winter now, and unfortunately we haven't beat this thing yet. But thank you for all of the folks that are working on the front lines and as first responders and as essential personnel in their supply chains for keeping us safe while we try to get through this and wait for that vaccine to come. And I really do appreciate everything it is that you do. So about appreciations, this one I kind of appreciate too. I previewed this quite some time ago, just been in my to-do pile, just haven't had a chance to get to it. This is a reel that was made in Japan circa 1970s, maybe early 80s. It's a diamond reel called Daimond Micro 7 with a patent pending, stamped Japan. And it's kind of looks like the Daiwa reels, but I don't think it is because of the case design. It's got screws on both sides of the case. That's kind of, I've seen that somewhere before, other than something like your Mitchell reels, the 302s and the like. But we're going to take this apart. We'll show you how it's made, clean it up a little bit here. This is a personal reel. I got this as part of a bigger parts lot, and so we will take care to condition this, but more importantly, this is one to show you kind of let's go exploring kind of a thing. So I start by taking off the exterior parts. While I do that, I want to mention I do have a protective glove on my hand to keep the junk out of there. And looks like we got a flat clip here. Well, I'll get back to that in a moment. Got an interesting trip lever here. You want to make sure that it works. This is good because you can actually see where it trips when it hits the that point over there. Of course, I'm walking it the wrong way. And you want to make sure that this is oiled and lubed. That's one of the biggest issues with these trip wires. I'm going to use a penetrating oil all around. I do know it trips, but it's a little sticky. So just use the penetrating oil. Look at how it just flips it right up. As simple as that. Something that hasn't seen action in a while, and all of a sudden it's just doing what it can to trip there with the smack. All right, that we'll come back and get all that excess penetrating oil out of there in a little bit. But let's continue. This has a handle that is removed by turning it clockwise. Has a gear that I'm sure is going to be able to be pushed out. So let's go ahead and take these side plate screws out. And this reel, I'm guessing, was okay. You know, price point, mid-range price point. It's not a cheap reel. The cheap reels of the time would have been less complicated. This one has a couple of different designs to it. There's a beautiful design on this reel. So I don't know who made this reel. One of the things we're going to do before we push that main gear out is get that dog off. But this has a crosswind block that's riding on here. And I'm going to have to take the other side off to remove the axle shaft, I'm sure. So I took those 3 screws, put them on my desk here. And now I'm going to have to make sure that they're all the same screw. Clean that desk off from that extra penetrating oil. We'll take the other side off. I'm pretty sure that these will be the same size screw as well, but you never know. I was just working on a Calcutta 400 TE, and it had one side plate screw that was different than the others. So, and this too. This one appears to be a little bit shorter than the others now. I guess they're about the same. All right, I'm going to put them in a separate portion of my kit. This is an aluminum piece that's been molded. I'm using the bottom of a milk jug as a parts tray. You're watching that in the background. And we had to get to this side to pull that screw out so that we could remove the axle shaft. So relatively uncomplicated in terms of number of moving pieces and parts. They all seem to be well engineered. And they seem to be that it hasn't been serviced in a while. It's a good time to tell you to take pictures. So we've got this set up. I imagine we can reverse the handle on this one by removing all of the different pieces and parts. But take a look. you have a flat side that's running on this piece and a longer extension for that stud to travel on the other. Then we have a pass-through, which is what's holding the axle shaft. And we have a lot of old grease, so let's get that out of the way. And now with the grease out of the way, we can take the rotor off. That looks like a 10 millimeter. I never seem to have the right tool right at hand. Oh, there it is. Now if we can't move this, we're going to go for a deep socket. Okay, we need to get that 10 millimeter deep socket, and I don't think I have it on my table, so I'll be right back. Okay, so I've gone ahead and got my 10 millimeter. Let's put that on the reverse. Okay, I'm feeling that there's a lot of tension on this one, so try to see if it's counter-threaded by putting it on what we would normally say is tighten mode. There you go. I broke it, and then I will remove the rest by hand here. And again, you want to go with a deep socket when you can't fit over that ridge, rather than doing something like there where you run the risk of beating that up. Should be able to pull that off. There's a little washer here. Just pay attention to that. Know that that goes under the nut. This is the rotor that we just serviced, and now we have a ball bearing, which is nice. So this is definitely not the cheapest of the structures here. I'm going to remove this. I'm going to leave these right on the table because I'm going to service this and put this right back. So this one was screaming a little bit, chirping if you will. I'm sure that's because all that grease that was in there is dried out and there's been nothing in there to replace it. So we're going to just make sure that we do this as a good cleaning and lubrication. Notice that there's a shim washer on top there, and then you can pull that out. And here's our ball bearing and our pinion gear. And I wanted to pull that pinion gear out so that we could clean it. It's been a while, so let's get that groove. I'm going to use a hard bristle brush to get the old grease out. I like to keep it on a paper towel, that way it doesn't spread around my bench. Check those teeth, make sure that they're nice and even and uniform. They are. A little bit of dried grease off the bearing here. I'm going to flush this bearing. This has got some built up dried grease in it. This has got the one side of the bearing is the shielded, and the other side is not. Let's just clean all of that up. It's turning nice and freely. I'm sure that the noise I was hearing was not a bearing noise. It was more of a nut. There you go. And I'm going to use grease on this. Normally I oil bearings, but this one has the grease in it, so I'm just going to repack. And notice I got that glove on, and that glove becomes a good tool. You can push down into there. Sometimes they make a pressure one where you can go buy one and it'll pressure feed it in. I think hand pressure is enough on that. Then we're going to turn this over the way it came out. I'm going to reseat that back in here. I'm just going to check. So a little bit of dirt in that cavity there, so let's get rid of that. Reinsert the pinion gear and the bearing. There's a ramp on this. The ramp goes up. I don't think it matters where the ramp goes, but just check to make sure you have good alignment for each of the holes. And I think that in this case they don't line up perfectly, which would tell you that there is a method here in terms of where the ramp sits. There you go. That's the one that lines up well. Before I do that, we noted that this little washer came off the bearing, so let's get that back on. You probably could fit it through the screw the hole, but why risk it? Let's just put it in right now. And then when you do these have an offset in them, so that these flathead screws lie flush. So when you do these, just get them started. If you over tighten one, then you're going to have to come back and probably loosen it up to get the others in. So just give it a snug but not knocked down kind of an approach here. Last one of these. So if you like this kind of activity here, watching how to repair reels, or as a reference point for you repairing your own reels, I'd ask you to subscribe. It helps my channel, and it'll help you because you won't miss any of the episodes. And I try and post frequently, almost daily during this pandemic, as a kind of a tribute to our healthcare and EMT and first responders and everybody that's out there on the lines doing it every day. I certainly don't need to do this, but I'm trying to do this to keep us all entertained, as well as to share with you some of the things that I've picked up along the way, and how to judge reels, and some tips on some other things, maybe buying and other things along with the reel repair. Okay, so we want to get some grease onto that pinion gear. Do that right now. We have the little holder for the axle shaft. I would tell you take pictures along the way. That way you'll avoid mistakes like I almost made there by putting this on upside down. And it would only bog down performance, and you have to come back later. The axle shaft, it was tough to get out. I'm thinking that's dried grease, so I'm going to use a 4.0 steel wool. It's a very light steel wool, but it will help clean off the residual and actually polish the metal a little bit. Then we can go ahead and take our rotor. Chris is going to yell at me because I've used this towel before, but let's just get the rest of the WD-40 or penetrating oil out of there. I'm going to push up on that. I'm going to reseat the rotor. There was a washer under that. So let's get that washer on. And then remember, we took it off in a clockwise fashion, so to put it on, it's got to go in a counterclockwise fashion to get that seated properly. And as much as you can tighten by hand, go ahead and do that, and then switch over your ratchet. And finish the tightening of that. Now we can put our axle shaft in. Just a light coating of grease. Any more than a light coating is just going to get scraped off in that hole there. This goes down, and then you want to align the hole in the axle shaft. Turn the reel over so that you can align it with the hole in the carrier. There's a little washer on the end of that screw. Don't lose that washer. Make sure it goes back in the way it came out. And then we can tighten this down. And then we'll go over to the gear side there. And we'll push that gear out and make sure that that's nice and clean as well. So we've cleaned the rotor and the top side of this. That's doing nicely. You can see how evenly it spins. We've got our carrier here. Let's come over here now and push the main gear out. And that was bogged down as well. I just felt as I was doing this that there was a lot of old dried grease on there, so don't skip that step. Matter of fact, use that steel wool if you feel that it's not coming off. There was just a little bit on this post here, so let's get that done. Check the back. That's where your anti-reverse dog is going to stop the wheel. That's why you want to take this off with the anti-reverse in off position, because as you go to reinstall, if you have it in the on position, you're going to have to do a little bit of maneuvering to get it to fit properly, and that's never a good idea. Okay, this one has a stud built into it. We're going to make sure we get an ample supply of grease on here, because this wheel was chirping. And get the grease on the inside here too, because this block is going to be riding with that piece. Last part of this is get the grease on the shaft here. Now you can do this two ways. The way I like to do this is to match the stud here while I can, so I can see it, and then put the cover on. I'll just put a little bit of a drop of oil on there. I'm using an aftermarket oil. It's called Reelex. It's a synthetic fishing reel oil, and generally speaking, I don't care what oil you're using, but I do care that you use a fishing reel oil. Somebody just had asked me before about hot sauce. That's fine. Well, we didn't do that successfully there. So let's try this again. This time I guess I'll do it with the stud on. Alright, and then we have the 3 longer screws on this side. If you weren't paying attention, I recommend that you take pictures along the way. That way, as you get to critical junctures, you can go back and refer to how you took the pieces off, what the sequence was. And in this case, we know that the screws are long and short. We kind of noted that on the way out, but if you get confused, well, pictures are fine. Cell phone, video camera, digital camera. You don't have to do the narrative like I'm doing here. You want to do the narrative, that's great. I welcome folks to do that for sure. I don't have a monopoly on reel repair, that's for sure. Alright, we're going to come back now, put the handle on. And we'll give it a ride to make sure that everything's working the way it should. And boy, if that doesn't sound a whole lot different than when we started this exercise. Okay, back on here. Somebody sent me a list of, there's like 6 or 7 dominant trade reel manufacturers in the 1970s and 80s. Most of the names you would never recognize. You would recognize their brands, but they would make reels for multiple companies under their trade names, right? So in this case, Daimond was somebody's trade name, but I don't believe there's a Daimond manufacturing company. I believe it would be made by one of these consortiums. And I'll just have to go do my homework and report back to you on which one it was. So, for example, the Olympic reels, the Shakespeare reels of the time, those reels were made by multiple companies on a contract basis. All right, let's get some of the old grease and grime off of there. This one cleaned up nicely. Really wasn't beat up to begin with. It's just a little test there. Of course, I just loaded this right on the trip lever. Okay, we're firing away. Very good. All right, last part then is this. Sometimes this one is very interesting to see. I have a flat C-ring in here. Sometimes pens use these as well. They ride in a groove, and you really have to find the place where you can pull that groove out. It's not a very hard spring. It's just an awkward one. So I use this little pick that I have, this metal pick. And this one, unfortunately, the way it is located, it's kind of like right in the wrong spot. see if third time's the charm. I'm getting it from the back because I can't load over the front. But there it is, and that one shot, and I never got to the point of telling you to be careful because they can shoot. But boy, it did shoot. Look at this. This has got a nice set of drag washers in here. It's got what appears to be leather washers. And yeah, they are. Now they're stuck on here because of the grease drying and acting as an agent. I'm not even going to wrestle that bottom one there. Oh, why not? Life's worth taking chances on, right? So we have 3 leather washers. They need to remain flexible, and in order to have them flexible, I do use a drag wheel grease. If you don't have drag wheel grease, you use your regular fishing wheel grease, but get it coated. Use that gloved hand of yours as a tool. Wipe it in. If there's any excess, wipe it off and put it back in to the cavity. Notice that there's 2 round washers and 1 geared washer. The round washers are called keyed washers because they fit to the axle shaft. And the geared washer is in the middle always. So we're going to take a round washer first. Place that in there. Tap it down. We'll do the same thing 2 more times. We're going to get some grease onto that washer. We're going to make sure that it's lubricating it, and that's the idea here. It's not that it's going to change the dynamic of the drag at all, but what it is going to do is keep it flexible so that it doesn't dry and rip and tear. One more time. Dip it in. Rub it around in your gloved hand. If it has any excess, wipe it off. Put that back in. And the top washer goes in, and then make sure that you have enough room. You got to check to make sure that that groove in the spool is there. And then there's multiple ways to do this. Pick the one that you like best. You can either put it in the back and work to the front, or you can just get one side in, hold it down, kind of work it around. Generally, I like to put the back in first. This might be a little difficult to see. The one side is in now. Just going to do the same thing with the other now. That's got a little point on it, so I'm going to just use a screwdriver blade to pull on this. There you go. So that's how it's seated. One more piece then, it's just taking that drag adjuster. Take our spool, get that on. We have a little click ratchet here, you can put a little drop of oil on that as well. Just tighten that up. Tight, back it off. Rolling, drives are doing what they should be doing. Final test drive then. Give it a ride. Boy, it's taking everything off. Click her on. There you have it. The Daimond Deluxe Micro 7. Patent pending reel, made in Japan in the 1970s. So if you like this, again, please subscribe to see more, and please click the notifications. Also indicate that you like it on the video itself. I would also appreciate it if you do that. If you have a question, leave it in the comments. Doesn't have to be on this reel. It can be on any reel in particular. And I'll try and get you unstuck if you're stuck on something, or get you additional information if it's information that you need. And finally, if you have a reel that needs to be repaired, well, I repair them by mail. So if you contact me on the business card that follows using my email, I'll be happy to provide you with the repair information. So that's it. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.